I am to teach you the Environmental Science UGC-NET paper 2. And here in the paper 2, today we are starting the Fundamentals of Environmental Science, Unit 1. If you look at the past question papers, in the all past question papers, if you analyze the number of questions that you can find from this particular unit is about on an average 10. This is ranging from 7 to 13. In some year there are 7 questions, some year 9 questions, some year 10 questions, and in some year there are 13 questions from this unit as well. So out of the 100 question, almost on an average you will get 10 question from this particular unit in the upcoming paper as well. So according to that, one of the most important unit of this paper 2 of environmental science that today we are starting in the first class of this crash course. So let's start or begin this fundamentals of environmental science. Before starting this particular unit and going to the fundamental part of environmental science, a few important terminologies and things are very important. These are described here in this particular slide that you can see. So here there are biogeographical classification is qualified or the shown here that you can see in your particular screen. And here, if you look at the all over the world, that particularly see on the left side of your screen, and then we have the biogeographical region on the other side of our screen. So there are total 17 megadiversities countries in the world. So here you can see there are total 17 megadiversities countries that you can see in your screen. That is the United States, then we have Mexico, Cambodia, Ecuador, Peru, then Venezuela, Brazil we have, then Congo, South Africa, Madagascar, Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia. India is also one of the megadiversity countries. Then we have China, Philippines, and Papua New Guinea. So these are total 17 important megadiversities countries all over the world. And here, why these are called as megadiversity countries? Because the biodiversity that you can find in these particular countries is very high. Now, what is the biodiversity? So biodiversity simply means the number of species that you can find out in a particular unit area of that particular region. If the very high number of species you can find out, so that would be the high mega biodiversity country. If low number of species you can find out in the area, that is the low mega biodiversity country. So in the mega diversity country, we include only those countries which have very rich biodiversity or very rich number of species you can find out. So these are the total 17 countries all over the world which are classified as a mega diversity country. What you have to remember? You have to remember there are total 17 mega biodiversity country, and India is one of them. They can ask you the number, or they can also provide you the options of the countries, and they can ask which one is the mega diversity country. So remember that India is also one of them, and these are the other countries that you can see the screen which are mega diversity country. And coming to the India, let's talk about the India. Now, if you look at the India, the whole country is divided in multiple biogeographical regions. What regions? Biogeographical regions. It means these are the areas of the different kind of weather phenomena, different kind of the climatic phenomena, and also sustaining different kind of species. So there are total such 10 regions. These regions are biogeographical regions that you can see. Andaman Nicobar Island we have the coastal region, then we have northeast region, Gangetic Plain we have, then Deccan Plateau, then Western Ghats, semi-arid region, Indian Desert Zone, Himalayan Zone, Trans-Himalayan Zone, and then contributing all these areas, total 100% of the biogeographical area. So if you cannot remember all the names, it's okay, but remember the least area as well as the most occupied area of the region. So the very least area occupied by any region, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Island, occupying only 0.3% of the area all over the India. And the largest region that we have among all these regions, that is our Deccan Plateau. Deccan Plateau is containing or occupying almost 42% of the whole India's area. So the largest of the biogeographical region is the Deccan Plateau, and the smallest biogeographical region is Andaman and Nicobar Island. Remember these two anyhow. Coming to the next slide, you can see the environmental factors which are governing the species formation, the climatic conditions, and remaining all the external factors of any particular region. So these important environmental factors are divided in two types. These are physiological and geological factors. So these two biogeographical regions or the factors that you can see, the physiological, geological factors are divided in two categories, biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors are all the living materials or all the living organisms. Then abiotic factors are all non-living materials. For example, soil, temperature, climatic conditions, wind, all these things are totally abiotic factors, which is not having living material. So all the environmental factors can be divided in two broad categories, biotic and abiotic. Biotic are the living organisms, abiotic are the non-living organisms. And one by one, the important physiological or geological factors that we have to discuss here are the temperature. Temperature is the most important type of geological or physiological factor which is governing the environment, particular type of environment. And according to the temperature range, there are multiple type of classification on the temperature itself. So very first classification here is the temperature range classification according to the temperature range. All the species or organisms can be divided in two categories. One is called as eurythermal, another one is called as stenothermal. So what is eurythermal? Eurythermal are those organisms which work in a wide range of temperature. So they can survive in very low temperature as well, and they can survive in the very high temperature as well. So those type of organisms can be called as eurythermal. For example, if I give you example, viruses can survive in the very high temperature as well as the very low temperature. So those can be called as eurythermal type of organisms. Then we have stenothermal organisms. Stenothermal organisms are those organisms which works in a very narrow range of temperature. So they can survive in a only particular specific range of temperature, very narrow range of temperature. For example, the human beings, or you can say, for example, any kind of mammals, especially mammals are only able to survive in a very narrow range of temperature. These can be called as the stenothermal type of organisms. Then we have the according to specific temperature value. Again, the species or the different organisms can be divided in three types. One is called as thermophilic. Thermophilic works in more than 60 degrees Celsius of temperature. These organisms or species can be called as thermophilic organisms. Then we have moderate organisms, which works in a 40 to 60 degree range. And then we have mesophilic organisms, which works in the range of 10 to 40 degrees Celsius range. These can be called as mesophilic organisms. So this is the temperature classification of different organisms and species. Now coming to the environmental factors, next thing that is according to the temperature regulation. According to the temperature regulation, the organisms can be again divided in four more types. The very first type here that you can see is the regulator. What is the regulator? It means those organisms which are regulating their temperature by their in-self body. So those can be called as regulator type of organisms. So they do homeostasis. Now, what is the homeostasis? Homeostasis basically means resistance to the any kind of change. So if you increase the temperature, so they will also reduce their temperature. If you reduce the temperature, the organism will increase their temperature by their own body mechanism. So these can be called as regulator type of organisms. And by their internal body action, they can change their temperature. For example, mammals. If you look at the example of human being, if you increase the temperature, so sweating will start, and due to evaporation process, again the temperature will come down. If you decrease the temperature, shivering will start, or other type of mechanisms will start, and it will ultimately increase the body temperature. So that can be classified, or these organisms can be classified as a regulator organism. Then we have the conformer organism. So they do temperature regulation by the external environment. So for example, the conformer organisms are the reptiles or crocodiles, or basically these organisms are called as cold-blooded animals. So these cold-blooded animals, they depend on the external environment to regulate their temperature. For example, if I take example of crocodiles, so they come out from the water to take sunlight. So due to the sunlight, they increase or they are able to increase their body temperature. And when they have high body temperature, they again go back to the inside of water. So these type of organisms which are regulating their temperature by the external environment. Snakes and other reptiles all do the same mechanism. So these are called as the conformer type of organisms. Then we also have migrator type of organisms. So migrator type of organisms, they change their location. So they change their location to again regulate their temperature. if severe winter is coming, so they say, so on that particular time, they go to the hotter side of the climate or hotter side of the earth. And if there is high temperature, summer is coming, so they again come back to the normal type of environment or winter side or cold side of the earth. So these are called as the migrators, especially the birds. Birds are migrator type of organisms or species. Then we have another type of organisms which suspend their metabolic activity as well to survive in the environment. And there are two types of suspended metabolic activities that you can find out. That is the hibernation and the estivation. So hibernation and estivation are the mechanism of save yourself from the very extreme kind of environment. The hibernation is also called as cold sleep. The estivation is called as summer sleep. So as in the name itself, you can see hibernation means during the very high winter time, when the temperature is very, very low, the organism go to the sleep. They reduce their metabolic activity, they conserve the energy, and they are not going to come in the outer environment to save themselves. That is kind of hibernation or cold sleep. Then during the summer time, if temperature is very high, especially the snails go to the estivation kind of sleep. So they found any moist place or cool place and they go to the sleep, reduce their metabolic activity and not coming out in the environment. So that kind of called as estivation type of suspended metabolic activities. So this is all about the temperature regulation. Coming to the next environmental factor, that is water. So again, the organisms are divided in multiple types according to which type of water they are surviving in. So according to the pH range, again the classified organisms can be divided in two types, that is the euryhaline and one is stenohaline. So euryhaline, again same in the case of, we have already seen in the case of temperature. The species can live in very wide range of pH, or they can also survive in the high salinity as well. In the case of stenohaline organisms, so these species can live only in a very narrow range of pH. They cannot tolerate very high pH, maybe very low pH. They will only survive in a very specific range of that pH. So these organisms can be called as stenohaline organisms. So this is classification according to the pH of water.